With both Barbie and Oppenheimer breaking box office records this weekend, I think it's safe to say that we're in the middle of the summer movie season. When I think about blockbuster movies, I can't help but be reminded of all the films from the 1980s and 90s that were adapted to the Nintendo Entertainment System, even when it made absolutely no sense. With so many crummy movie games out there taking up space, I started to wonder what Electronic Gaming Monthly thought about all these games back in the day. And more importantly, what movie games they consider to be the best of the best. Now, in case you're curious, EGM reviewed a total of 20 8-bit games that were based on movies. There were more on the Game Boy, but for this list, we're just going to focus solely on the console games, all of which ended up being on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Perhaps knowing how bad most of these movie games are, EGM wisely skipped over a lot of the more questionable titles like Platoon, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and Hudson, which was apparently big enough to be put on the cover, but not big enough to be reviewed. What we're going to do today is count down the best and worst 8-bit movie games using Electronic Gaming Monthly's own words and scores. There's no editorializing here, we're just going to focus on what the critics said back when these games first came out. So go and grab the biggest, saltiest, and butteriest tub of popcorn and enjoy the show, because this is EGM's Top 20 Movie Games, 8-bit edition.
You've been Back to the Future at the movies. Now go there on your NES. In Back to the Future 2 and 3, a double mission to save the future. LJN's Back to the Future 2 and 3. Get it while there's still time.
We're going to kick things off with number 20, Total Recall, with a score of 2.75 out of 10. Nintendo Entertainment System games just hit a new low. Total Recall is a total bore that has substandard graphics and none of the action found in the movie. In the movie of the same name, Arnold's character's memory was erased. This game, based on the movie, should also have its memory erased. Total reject. Number 19, Cliffhanger, with a score of 3 out of 10. Cliffhanger was a decent flick, but this wimpy 8-bit version doesn't even compare. The graphics are far below the NES standards, but even worse, the game just isn't any fun. There's way too much dead space, and you only see one enemy at a time, and everything is just way too tiny. The control needs a serious overhaul due to too much lag time. Games like this won't bring the 8-bit back from the grave. Number 18, Friday the 13th, with a score of 3.25 out of 10. Friday the 13th could have been an excellent game, with blood spurting and knife slashing. What we have instead is another boring Goonies 2 ripoff that is just plain dull. The graphics are substandard and the whole game is slow and tedious to play. This game could even turn Jason's stomach. Number 17, Bill and Ted's Excellent Video Game Adventure, with a score of 3.75 out of 10. Bogus! The graphics and play control are most undesirable for the present game at hand, dude. Now, should LJN ever decide to dismantle these gnarly tunes, the overall irritation factor may allow this movie title card to slide up to a 4. In the meantime, Bill and Ted are flunking most heinously. Number 16, Ghostbusters 2, with a score of 4 out of 10. I didn't like the movie, and I don't like the game. What Ghostbusters 2 suffers from is a lack of content. None of the different segments are particularly bad, there just isn't enough substance to make them interesting or fun. None of these segments are strong enough to stand on their own. Just like the movie, Ghostbusters 2 is a disappointment. Number 15, A Nightmare on Elm Street, with a score of 4.75 out of 10. This game, while possessing a fairly large environment to explore, just isn't intense enough. The dream sequences are a nice angle, but the play doesn't change much, just the graphics. Elm Street tries to be Simon's Quest, but comes up short. Number 14, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back, with a score of 4.75 out of 10. One would expect that these games would have a ton of action and fight scenes. They don't. This card is more of a maze/puzzle game. Your progress in spots is dependent on how well you can jump from block to block, and it can get repetitive until you do everything correctly. Still doesn't have that Lucas touch. Number 13, The Terminator, with a score of 5 out of 10. The Terminator almost had a chance on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Sorry to say, the control is awkward and the variety of enemies was too lacking in order to keep my attention. Forget the sound, I just turn it off. I like the idea, and if it were solid, it would be hot. My favorite feature is the gun angle control to blast away Arnold. Number 12, Godzilla, Monster of Monsters, with a score of 5.25 out of 10. Godzilla is an interesting game that throws in some strategy between the action sequences. It is the action scenes, however, that need improvement. Godzilla and Mothra move too slowly for any real exciting interaction, and even though the large characters look good, the game is average. Number 11, The Blues Brothers, with a score of 5.5 out of 10. The Blues Brothers was a great movie, but the video game just doesn't cut it. Where's the music? Where are the personalities of the characters? What does this have to do with the movie in any way? Beyond that, though, The Blues Brothers is kind of fun. It's pretty simple, but the gameplay is there.
Capcom introduces Little Nemo, the Dream Master. We tapped into your deepest, darkest nightmares.
Slow down, Eddie. I think we got something. This could be it. I'm getting snakes, wasps. Wow, look at this stuff! Big-lipped tadpoles. This kid's turned himself into a killer bee. These kids are strange.
Who dreamed up something so weird? You did.
This one's riding a purple lizard. Holy smoke!
Little Nemo, the Dream Master, for Nintendo by Capcom.
You're gonna make a game out of this?
And we're back with number 10, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, with a score of 5.75 out of 10. I saw the movie, and the best thing in it was the king, and he only occupied 30 seconds of the film. This game left me with an equally unsatisfied feeling. Not because there was anything wrong with what I was supposed to be doing, but after a while I just realized I wasn't having much fun. Number 9. RoboCop 3, with a score of 5.75 out of 10. Boasting graphics reminiscent of the original NES Batman, RoboCop 3 offers strong head-to-head battle action across a scrolling landscape of varying heights. The action moves at a decent pace, with the prerequisite bosses and enhancement cinemas, but the gameplay, although awkward at times, is still fun. Number 8, Batman Returns, with a score of 6 out of 10. Hark, the 8-bit is gasping for air. Can you hear it? I'm disappointed in the quality of this cart. The first Batman was filled with technique and interesting gameplay. This game reminds me of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with Batman characters. Punch and jump kick your way through linear levels and extra tough end bosses. Everything about Batman Returns deserves honorable mention, but who needs outdated graphics, sound, and gameplay anyway? Number 7, Star Wars, with a score of 6.25 out of 10. The movie set standards that the industry is still trying to equal, and the company can perform magic. The game, however, does neither and is very flat and ordinary. Not enough variety, the action never gets intense, and it just doesn't have that Star Wars excitement. A big disappointment. Number 6, The Jungle Book, with a score of 6.75 out of 10. This is the NES? Where did that animation come from? Seriously now, I've never seen a Nintendo Entertainment System game that looks or plays like this game does. There are loads of items to use, and the levels themselves are very challenging. However, you really have to be precise in the timing of jumps, or it's a long way to the bottom. The music is decent for an NES game as well. One of the best buys for the NES out there. Number 5, The Three Stooges, with a score of 6.75 out of 10. Three Stooges is okay, but it's not a great game. The full-screen graphics are very detailed and humorous, but the rest of the game graphics are poorly done. It seems like most of the attention was put on the graphic picture and sound, and none on the game characters or play. Number 4, The Little Mermaid, with a score of 6.75 out of 10. Finally, a true family game that kids and adults of all ages and sexes can enjoy. Little Mermaid has a near-perfect blend of action and adventure. The music is upbeat, the graphics are good, clean fun, and the theme is, of course, excellent. A must for younger NES owners. Number 3, Little Nemo, the Dream Master, with a score of 7.75 out of 10. Capcom has a history of making games with kiddie themes and great gameplay. Nemo is no exception. While the cute and cuddly theme may scare some players off, Nemo is filled with new concepts and excellent gameplay. Great cartoony graphics bring a Disney feel to it. It's rescue rangers in a dream world. Number 2, Batman, the video game, with a score of 7.75 out of 10. Combine the climbing action of Ninja Gaiden and the action from Castlevania and you get the best action game of the season. The dark background graphics parallel those in the movie and add to the visual effect. Excellent intermissions and merciless bosses will wear down even top players. And finally, at number 1, Gremlins 2, The New Batch, with a score of 8 out of 10. Sunsoft seems to be the only company that can bring movies to games. Gremlins reminds me of Fester's Quest, with the exception of jumping. Excellent cinema displays, great graphics and sound, as well as challenging play. Just don't play this one after midnight.
It's here. Batman, the video game. From Sunsoft. For the Nintendo Entertainment System. Let the battle begin.
Hey, thanks for watching me count down the best and worst movie games. If you liked what you saw here, then you should know that we post new episodes just about every Monday. In fact, we have a whole playlist where we look at all kinds of classic franchises, including Sonic, Mario, Echo, Bonk, Mutant Turtles, Batman, Castlevania, Resident Evil, Twisted Metal, Ridge Racer, and so much more. I recommend you give it a binge. Now, here's the question I have for you. What's your favorite 8-bit movie game? Is it one of the games that was listed, or maybe it's one that EGM forgot? And look, it doesn't even have to be on the NES, because the Master System also had a couple of movie games. Let me see your picks in the comments below. In other news, we'll be back later this week with a brand new episode of Nintendo Switch Online Review Crew, because they have to be announcing something, right? It's been 3 weeks. If that sounds good to you, then I strongly recommend you click that subscribe button and support what we're doing here. Until then,